Okay, so today we're diving deep into the world of Ibogaine. This is a substance from an African shrub that honestly presents one of the most profound dilemmas in modern medicine. It's a story of incredible promise, really serious risk, and some absolutely cutting-edge science.
So, here's the central question, the one that really gets you thinking. What if you could interrupt a lifelong addiction with just a single dose? We're not talking about long-term maintenance or slowly tapering off. We're talking about a radical one-time intervention that could potentially just reset the brain. It sounds more like science fiction than medicine, but the evidence is pretty staggering.
And this whole idea wasn't discovered in some high-tech lab. It came from a totally accidental discovery back in 1962 by a guy named Howard Lotsoff. He wasn't a scientist. He was actually struggling with heroin addiction himself. After one single experience with Ibogaine, he realized his withdrawal symptoms, his cravings, they were just gone. And that one moment kicked off decades of underground use, and eventually, a whole lot of scientific curiosity. All right, so what is this stuff exactly? Ibogaine is a psychoactive alkaloid that comes from the root bark of a shrub called Tabernanthe iboga. And long before it was ever looked at for addiction, it was, and still is, a central part of Bwiti spiritual practices in West Africa. So this isn't just some chemical, it's a compound with incredibly deep cultural and historical roots. So to really get a handle on Ibogaine's potential, we have to look at what it's actually like to take it. The experience isn't just a quick high. It's a profound, multi-hour journey that people often describe as a waking dream. Yeah, researchers have actually broken this whole journey down into 3 distinct phases. First up, you've got the Oneiric, or waking dream phase. This is the most intense part, lasting anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. That's followed by the Evaluative Phase, which is a much longer period of just calm, neutral reflection on everything that just happened. And finally, there's a residual phase of heightened awareness that can actually stick around for days.
So what are people actually seeing and feeling during this waking dream? It's not just random hallucinations. Researchers have found these common themes. Deeply personal, narrative visions, almost like watching a movie of your own life, and this profound sense of introspection that a lot of people describe as a complete mental reset.
But here's the million-dollar question for medicine, right? A powerful personal experience is one thing, but can you actually measure its impact on addiction? Does it show up in the data? Well, let's take a look. This chart is, well, it's pretty stunning. It shows scores from the Subjective Opiate Withdrawal Scale, or SOWS, which is basically a way to measure how awful withdrawal feels. Before treatment, the average score was over 25. Just 12 to 24 hours after a single dose of Ibogaine, that score plummeted to around 14. That is a massive reduction in the physical agony of withdrawal, happening almost overnight.
And the effects aren't just immediate. This chart shows depression scores over a full year. Look at that drop. From a baseline over 22, which points to moderate depression, the scores fell dramatically in the first month and just kept dropping, ending at only 4.4 after a whole year. This suggests the psychological benefits can be incredibly long-lasting.
And this number right here, this shows the real-world impact. In one study, 12 out of 14 participants had either completely stopped or significantly cut back on their opioid use a full year after their treatment. That kind of success rate is remarkable for any addiction therapy, let alone one that's based on a single dose. Okay, so we have a substance with this unique, powerful experience and some very promising clinical data. But, and this is a huge but, this story has a very sharp, very dangerous turn. The potential rewards come with some very serious risks. The number one danger is its effect on the heart, specifically something called QT prolongation. Now, to put it simply, Ibogaine can mess with the heart's electrical rhythm. It makes the heart muscle take too long to recharge between beats, and that can lead to life-threatening arrhythmias. And this risk is not just theoretical. A key review from 2012 identified 19 fatalities that happened in close connection with taking Ibogaine. 19. That number has cast a very long shadow over its potential as a therapy, and it's a huge reason for its restrictive legal status. So the crucial thing to understand here is context. Many of these tragic outcomes happened in unregulated, clandestine settings. Now contrast that with medically supervised use, where you have pre-screening for heart conditions, constant monitoring, and controlled doses. The risk profile changes dramatically depending on the setting, but that inherent cardiac risk can never be totally eliminated. This complex risk profile has created a totally fractured legal landscape. In the US, it's a Schedule I drug, meaning it has no accepted medical use. But then you look at Canada and New Zealand, and it's available by prescription. And in other places, like Mexico, it exists in this unregulated gray area. This whole patchwork system just forces many people to seek treatment in potentially unsafe environments. So we know it can stop the symptoms, but how? What is Ibogaine actually doing inside the brain? Well, recent science is pointing to a truly fascinating possibility. For the longest time, the mechanism was a total mystery. But a groundbreaking study in rats from 2024 suggests that Ibogaine might not just be a palliative treatment that masks symptoms. It might actually be promoting the physical repair of the damage caused by opioid use. To understand this, we need to talk about myelin. Just think of it like the insulation on the electrical wiring in your brain. It's this fatty sheath that lets nerve signals travel quickly and efficiently. And we know from other research that chronic opioid use can actually damage this myelin, which really disrupts the brain's communication. Now, here's the big finding. In rats that were given morphine, a single dose of Ibogaine caused a significant upregulation, a huge boost in the genes and proteins that are responsible for building myelin. We're talking things like myelin basic protein, which is a key structural component, and CNPase, an enzyme that's crucial for the early stages of that repair work. The implication here is, well, it's profound. Ibogaine seems to be triggering the brain's own repair mechanisms. It might be actively helping to re-insulate the brain's wiring that was damaged by substance use. This could be the biological explanation for why its effects are so long-lasting. So, where does all this leave us? We have a substance with a rich history, a powerful subjective effect, compelling clinical data, a serious risk profile, and a potentially revolutionary mechanism of action. What's the path forward?
The consensus seems to be pretty clear. The only way forward is through rigorous, controlled science. We need formal clinical trials to really nail down the safety protocols and confirm how effective it is. Medical supervision, especially cardiac monitoring and patient screening, is absolutely non-negotiable. And hey, by understanding how it works, like its effect on myelin, we might even be able to develop safer molecules that give us all the benefits without the risk.
And that leaves us with this final, really challenging question. Opioid addiction itself carries a devastatingly high risk of death. So when you're faced with a potential interrupter, not a maintenance drug, but a true interrupter, how do we as a society balance the potential for a cure against a profile of serious but maybe manageable risk? There's no easy answer, but it's a question we can no longer afford to ignore.